What's the biggest mistake that people make when they're designing learning programs? Today, I'm going to tell you what that is and give you some tips for how to avoid making that mistake yourself. You want to come up? Okay. So before we get into the biggest mistake that people make, I'm going to give you a step-by-step process for an ideal learning experience. So, a learning need emerges in your organization. You talk to a bunch of people to get some more information and validate or disprove your assumptions about that need. Then you use that fresh insight to define a clear goal for the program. And once you've got a clear goal, you create your learning outcomes and define the impact that this program is going to have on the organization. Then you need to design an evaluation strategy to make sure you can actually measure if it's worked or not. And only now do we get into the actual design of the program. Everything up to now is research, insight, and strategic thinking. So you decide on the approach that you're going to take, what's your learning philosophy, what's your methodology, then you think about the delivery methods and the content that you need to create or curate, and then finally you get to the fun bit, the 8th step in this process. You can start to design the actual experience. Now you're getting close to this thing actually running, but it's all still quite theoretical, so you need to test your design with some real people. Then after that test, you've learned a bunch of things, so you need to iterate your approach, your methods, your content, and your experience based on what you've learned until you arrive at the final design, your final design, and then the work really begins. You've got your delivery, and after that you run your evaluation, and you take what you learned into a redesign process, and you do this over and over again. That's a lot. 14 steps, each of them complex and uniquely challenging. But in my experience, after a decade and a half of working with learning programs in corporates, governments, charities, NGOs, schools, this is what you need to do to make something that's truly great. So, what's the big mistake that people make when they're designing a learning program? I'm going to read to you a typically bad brief that you might get from a client if you're a consultant or from a leader if you're part of an internal L&D team. And just a little side note, my clients are great and I haven't had a brief like this for a long time. Love you guys. Okay, a bad brief might be something like this. We need a 6-week online course to teach all of the senior managers in the company how to use generative AI in their work. You can lift the process from the sustainability course that we ran last year because that had great feedback, and you can use the Gen AI content we already created for the tech team and either design by the end of next week. Okay, on the face of it, sounds cool, sounds like an interesting program to get our teeth into. A 6-week course, yep, I've created loads of those. Online, obviously. Senior managers, oh, dog's gone. Senior managers, we've got a clear target group so we can tailor the content and the experience that we already have to them. Generative AI, obviously, everyone needs to understand this and there's loads of fun things we can do to create a great experience. Pretty much designs itself and I'm sure it can bash that out in a week or 2. But where was the mistake? This brief is basically asking you to skip straight to the final design part of the whole process. Dog again. It's making all of these assumptions about what the needs are and how the program should be delivered. And of course, companies want to move fast, especially when everyone's either really excited or really scared about things like generative AI. But our job as learning designers is to slow the process down, to make sure we're designing the right thing for the right reasons at the right time for the right people. Designing a mediocre 6-week online course is actually quite easy. I've created plenty of those myself in the past, but now I believe that having the courage to say stop, we need to go back and talk to people, do some research, get clear on what this is and why they're doing is often hard. Because if we don't take the time in the strategy and design phases of a project, the delivery is just never going to be as good and people aren't going to learn what they need to learn. So, learning designers, be strong, get strategic and design based on what you know and what you've heard, not what your client or boss has just told you to design.